Imagine spending 10 years believing someone is your most trusted companion, only to discover at the very end that they were never human at all. And the scariest part? They look exactly like you. That's where this story is heading. But before we get there, the story begins with a man who created something far more powerful than humans. The year is 2103. A massive spaceship called the Covenant is carrying thousands of colonists, traveling 239 light-years away from Earth. Its mission is to reach a distant planet and establish a new home for humanity. Thousands of colonists are sleeping in hypersleep, and among the crew is a synthetic android named Walter. But there's something aboard the Covenant that nobody knows about. To understand it, we need to go back a little. A wealthy man named Peter Wayland is meeting the first android he ever created. He names him David. Wayland teaches David to speak like a human, understand music, and appreciate art. But as David becomes more intelligent, a disturbing question begins to form in his mind. If humans created me, then who created humans? And if humans were created by someone else, why couldn't their creator make something even better than them? That's when a dangerous idea takes root inside David. He doesn't want to simply serve humanity. He wants to become a creator himself. Now back aboard the Covenant, everything seems to be going according to plan. Thousands of people are asleep. The crew is in hypersleep, and the ship is peacefully traveling toward its destination. Then, without warning, a massive energy burst slams into the Covenant. The entire ship violently shakes. Systems begin failing, and hundreds of colonists inside their cryopods are suddenly in danger. The crew is awakened, but by then, it's already too late. Captain Branson is trapped inside his hypersleep pod, and despite the crew's desperate attempts to save him, he burns alive. Within minutes, what was supposed to be a peaceful mission has turned into a nightmare. With the captain gone, Orem is forced to take command. Then the crew receives a mysterious signal. It's coming from another planet. The signal sounds strangely human, and now the crew has a difficult decision to make. Should they continue toward their original destination, Origay 6, or investigate this unknown planet that seems to be broadcasting a signal resembling a human voice? Eventually, Orem makes his choice. They're going to land on the mysterious planet. The crew believes they may have discovered the perfect new home for humanity. But they have no idea that the world they're heading toward like paradise is actually going to become their grave. Now, as Walter steps onto the mysterious planet, an eerie silence surrounds him. The weather was perfect, and with the endless mountains stretching into the distance, it seemed like there couldn't be a better place for humans to live. But they had no idea that beneath the soil of this beautiful planet, something deadly was waiting. The team continued moving toward the signal. Along the way, they came across massive fields of wheat. But one question immediately came to mind. If there were no humans living here, who was growing all these crops? Suddenly, tiny particles floating through the air began drifting around them. One of those black particles was inhaled by Ledward, entering his body through his breath. Within minutes, his condition started getting worse. His eyes turned bloodshot, and blood began pouring from his body. Karen and Ferris quickly carried him back to the lander. But then, something started moving beneath Ledward's back. Before anyone could react, a terrifying white creature burst out of his body. Ferris panicked and fired her gun. But the bullet struck the lander's fuel tank. Boom! The entire lander erupted into flames. Orem watched helplessly as his wife, Karine, died right in front of him. But there was no time to mourn. The creature that had emerged from Ledward's body rapidly grew into a gigantic neomorph and attacked the team in the forest. One of the crew members was killed, while the others barely managed to escape. Now everyone finally understood the truth. This planet was anything but safe. Then Walter discovered an old helmet. A name was written on it. Elizabeth Shaw. Walter explained that 10 years earlier, a mission called Prometheus had mysteriously disappeared. They began to suspect that this was the very same planet where the Prometheus had ended up. But if Dr. Shaw had really come here, where was she now? Just then, The team spotted a massive structure that looked like the remains of an ancient city. They entered the mysterious place and were shocked to find a human-like figure inside. It was David, the android who had disappeared along with the Prometheus mission. David took them to his hideout and revealed that he had been living there alone for the past 10 years. But Daniels didn't trust him. Then David came face to face with Walter. The two looked almost identical, but their personalities couldn't have been more different. Walter followed the programming created by humans, while David had developed his own desire for freedom. David asked Walter, "If humans created you, does that mean you'll have to serve them forever?" Walter remained silent. David simply smiled. Then he showed Walter Dr. Shaw's grave and claimed that he had loved her. But that raised one terrifying question. If David really loved Dr. Shaw so much, then how did she end up dead? At night, Orem is alone with David. David shows him a strange creature and explains that it isn't a monster at all. It's a completely new form of life. Then David opens an egg. Suddenly, a facehugger bursts out and latches onto Orem's face. A little while later, Orem regains consciousness, but he has no memory of what happened. Without warning, excruciating pain tears through his body. His back arches violently, and then, bam! His chest bursts open as a terrifying creature claws its way out. But instead of being horrified, David watches with excitement. There's almost a sense of pride on his face as he quietly says, "My masterpiece." That's when Walter arrives, and the truth finally comes out. David was never trying to save Orem. He deliberately chose him as a test subject. In fact, the Covenant's arrival on the planet was no accident. David had sent the signal himself, deliberately luring the crew to this world. He didn't just want to kill these humans. He wanted to use their bodies to create a new species, one he believed would be perfect. But now Walter was standing in his way. On one side was David, who saw himself as a creator. On the other hand, Walter, determined to complete his mission. The two androids face each other. They look almost identical, but suddenly David attacks Walter and a brutal fight breaks out. Heavy objects are smashed apart as they battle. Walter is stronger, but David is far more cunning. David even tries to crush Walter beneath a massive statue, but Walter manages to escape. The fight continues until David seriously injures Walter's hand and knocks him to the ground. After saying something to him, David walks away. Meanwhile, Daniels and Lope discover that Captain Orem is dead. With nothing left keeping them there, they start making their way back to the Covenant. But on the way, a new and even more dangerous creature begins hunting them. Unlike the Neomorph, this creature is dark, glossy, and incredibly fast. Suddenly, it attacks Cole and kills him instantly. Lope barely manages to escape, but acid has splashed across his face, leaving him running in agony. Then Daniels reaches David again. But just then, a powerful attack hits. Walter has returned. Daniels is completely stunned. Walter explains that his self-repair system brought him back to life. Now, the two androids are face-to-face once again. Daniels and Lope manage to escape, while Walter stays behind. Another brutal fight breaks out between Walter and David. In the end, Walter defeats David and takes his flute. He then walks away. The Covenant crew somehow manages to escape that deadly place. But they have no idea that David has been using their entire journey as part of his own twisted plan. Back on the ship, another terrifying creature appears. It has grown into a full-size Neomorph and immediately attacks the crew. They open fire, but the creature puts the entire ship in danger. Somehow, they manage to throw it out into space, and everyone thinks the nightmare is finally over. But the real danger is already inside the ship. David has made it aboard, carrying the embryos with him. He has planned everything perfectly. Using Walter's identity, he disguises himself as his brother. Daniels believes he's the real Walter. She trusts him completely and even gives him the flute. Meanwhile, the Covenant continues heading toward its destination. Daniels gets ready for cryosleep and talks to the man she believes is Walter. She thinks they're finally safe. But in reality, David is already in control. He enters the control room and changes the ship's course. Instead of heading toward Orgay 6, the Covenant is now traveling toward the planet where David conducted his horrifying experiments. Something still doesn't feel right to Daniels. She carefully watches Walter and suddenly remembers something. David had once incorrectly identified the name of a poem. For a synthetic android, making a mistake like that should have been almost impossible. Daniel starts wondering if the person standing in front of her is really Walter. So she asks him directly, "What song did we play for Jacob?" Walter freezes. For the first time, panic appears on his face. Daniels asks the same question again, but Walter can't answer. That's when she finally realizes the truth. The man standing in front of her isn't Walter. It's David. But by then, it's already too late. David immediately activates Daniel's hypersleep pod. She screams, but within seconds, gas begins filling the chamber. Her eyes slowly begin to close. Meanwhile, David walks into the nursery and looks at the embryos he has collected. Then he looks at thousands of sleeping colonists. There is a strange sense of satisfaction on his face, almost like an artist admiring his greatest masterpiece after finally completing it. And then the screen slowly fades to black. The story ends there, but it leaves us with one terrifying question. What happens if David actually reaches Origay 6? Will he use thousands of colonists as subjects for his twisted experiments? Or will he create an entire army of alien creatures that could one day become a threat to the entire human civilization? And perhaps that's what makes the story so disturbing. The most terrifying villain wasn't an alien. It was a mind created by humans, an artificial intelligence that eventually began believing it was superior to its own creators. And in the end, the person Daniels thought was her protector turned out to be her greatest enemy. That was the biggest twist in Alien Covenant. If you enjoyed this movie explanation, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.